Shalom everybody, we'll do the blessing. Baruch atah Yahuwah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat ha'omer hayom yom ezrim v'tesha. Blessed are you, Yahuwah Elohah, King of the universe, who has commanded us to count the Omer on this day, day 29.
Praise Abba Yahuwah. Yes, as we already now on our 29th day, as we continue our journey with Jeremiah, Yeremiyahu. And now, just as I was praying before we started, something just came up in my spirit. You see, we've got to understand something. What is the purpose for you having been saved? What is the purpose? What is your purpose of your life? Do you think the purpose of your life is so that you can die and go to heaven? So we receive Messiah Yeshua so we can die and go to heaven? Well, that is not the purpose of us being here. We are the last generation. So as the last generation, there needs to be a vision. There needs to be a mission. And this is what we must understand. So right now, we are going to be able to open up Jeremiah 31 to understand your destiny, to understand that you have a destiny. If you are one who is set apart unto the Father, you are not just a Christian, you are not just a believer, you have an identity and you have a destiny. And so understand tonight, we are going to understand the destiny of a set-apart people that are called by the Father in order to be able to come into a millennial reign, which is what this chapter is about. This chapter, again, is future. Father speaking about a set-apart people, a remnant people, a house that he is gathering that is going to rule with him in a millennial reign. And so let's look at this wonderful blessing of chapter 31. At that time, declares Yahuwah, I shall be the allure of all the clans of Israel, and they shall be my people. So understand, he's already telling you, at that time, there is an appointed time in his timing of his lining up of things, that I shall be a lure of all the clans, so all the tribes of Israel, and they shall be my people. So you see, he knows those that are his and those that are not. They shall be his people. Thus said Yahuwah, a people escaped from the sword, found favor in the wilderness. Israel went when it went to find rest. So understand, what is he saying? There will be a people that is going to find an escape from the sword. But look at where they had to find the escape, in the wilderness. So that is why he's speaking, that we're going to have to come out of the places, come out of these places and come into a wilderness place with the Father. Yahuwah appeared to me from afar, saying, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, I shall draw you with loving commitment. So, look at this. This is for a people, a set-apart people whom he truly loves. He has loved with an everlasting love. I am going to build you again. So you see, he brings chastisement. He'll bring destruction. He will bring an exile. He brings all these things, but then he says, I'm going to build you again, and you shall be rebuilt, O maiden of Israel. Again you shall take up your tambourines and go forth in the dances of those who rejoice. Praise Abba Yahuwah. Isn't that a beautiful promise? So you see, up until now, it's been, up until chapter 29, destruction. Now, chapter 31, chapter 29, chapter 30, chapter 31. He's going to speak his blessings. Because this is our Father. I'm going to build you again, and he says, and then you will dance. Verse 5, again you shall plant vines on the mountains of Shimmeron. The planters shall plant and tread them as common. For there shall be a day when the watchmen cry on Mount Ephraim, arise, and let us go up to Zion, to Yahuwah our Lord. Interesting how he says there will be a cry on Mount Ephraim. Because you see, Ephraim is another name for Israel. So here in chapter 20, in chapter 28, chapter 31, 30 and 31, you will see how he talks about the house of Judah, how he talks about the house of Israel. So understand, Israel was the one that he really divorced, that went astray, that went into the nations. Yehudah is the one that still stayed faithful, because he says in chapter 33, we will read it, that he would need there to be able to stay with the house of David, so that there would come a king from the lineage of David that was still going to be faithful to the Father. So he says, for thus said Yahuwah, sing with gladness, O Yaakov, and shout among the chief of the nations. Cry out, give praise, and say, O Yahuwah, save your people, the remnant of Israel. May we speak this in his hearing in this moment. O Abba Yahuwah, save your people, the remnant of Israel. There is a remnant, you must understand. You see what he says there? The remnant, not the fullness, but a remnant. That even now, right now, in the land of Eretz Israel, there is only a remnant. Because not all that are in that land will be pleasing to the Father. Not all is part of his remnant. He will always have a remnant. See, I'm bringing them from the land of the north, and shall gather them from the ends of the earth. Among the blind and the lame, those with child and those in labor together, a great assembly returning here. So you see, there's going to be a great return. And so this of here we think is now just what we see in the land of Israel right now. But it's not the fullness of what is being spoken in the scriptures, and we're going to understand. They are returning, but that land is still a people that are still not keeping the Father's ways, that are still not faithful to the Father. And so it says in verse 9, with weeping they shall come, and with their prayers I bring them. I shall make them walk by rivers of waters, in a straight way in which they do not stumble. For I shall be a father to Israel and Ephraim. He is my firstborn. Interesting. I shall be a father to Israel and Ephraim. So you must understand this. Ephraim is, when we're going to understand Ephraim, in Ezekiel chapter 37, he speaks to the prophet to be able to make two sticks for the house of Judah and the house of Ephraim, which is another name for the 10 tribes. The 10 tribes was known. That's why that is the promise that comes from the second-born son of Joseph. Joseph's Manasseh was the firstborn. But once again, Yaakov, Israel, blesses Ephraim, and Ephraim gets the double portion blessing. And so it says, with weeping they shall come, and with their prayers I bring them. So it says, verse 10, hear the word of Yahuwah, O nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, he who scattered Israel gathers him, and shall guard him as a shepherd, his flock. So he's the one who's going to guard us. He's the one who's going to gather us, and then he's the one who's going to guard us. For Yahuwah shall ransom Yaakov and redeem him from the hand of one stronger than he. So praise the Father, even in the land of Israel, that is where Yaakov is dwelling right now, and he will be the one who will be their protection at the end of the day, and that is why we see, because Yaakov is there. Understand, the fullness of the house of Israel is not there. This is only 2 tribes really that are at the moment in the land of Israel. But he's saying, he's speaking to Yaakov, and he's speaking to this tribe. It's going to be more Judah at the moment that is there, and he will ransom and he will protect, and they shall come in and shall sing on the height of Zion and stream to the goodness of Yahuwah, for grain, for new wine, for oil, and for young of the flock and the herd, and their being shall be like a well-watered garden, and never languish again. So you see, this is now when he's going to gather, when the fullness of the house is going to come. Then shall a maiden rejoice in her dance, and young men and old together, and I shall turn their mourning to joy, and shall comfort them, and shall make them rejoice from their sorrow, and shall fill the being of the priests with fatness, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness, declares Yahuwah. Praise Abba. This is his promises. This is his blessing. This is his promises. This is what he's promising at the moment. Thus says Yahuwah, a voice was heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted for her children, because they are no more. Thus said Yahuwah, hold back your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for there is a reward for your work, declares Yahuwah, and they shall return from the land of the enemy. And there is expectancy for your latter end, declares Yahuwah, and your children shall return to their own country. So you see, even right now, even as the scattered house of Judah has been scattered throughout the nations of the world, they have started returning. Yet at the end of the day, they're still not living 100% in peace, but they at least have a nation that they can call their nation, that is able to keep the Sabbaths and the feasts for the Father, and that there's only a small portion of them that are really religious, and even religious is not quite 100%, because they have not really received Messiah, so it's a little bit of a problem, but it's okay, because the Father is bringing in the house of Israel right now. And that's what he's busy with. And there is expectancy for your latter end, declares Yahuwah, and your children shall return to their own country. I have clearly heard Ephraim lamenting. So you see, this is our scripture. So you see, Yehudah has returned. Yehudah has the right to return to that land. But Ephraim right now has not got the right to return to the land, because unless they can prove their so-called Jewishness. Now, being Jewish has got nothing to do with being part of the house of Israel, because being Jewish is part of a religion. And so, like I have said to the rabbi, when I went to go and see the rabbi in Portugal, I said to the rabbi, because the rabbi said, well, you just need to go and convert to Judaism, and in order for then you can come back to the land of Israel. And I said, you know what, Rabbi, what is very interesting is that is what they did to my ancestors in the 1500s, in the 1600s, in the 1700s. My ancestors were forced to convert to a religion called Catholicism. And now I'm being forced to convert to a religion called Judaism in order for me to be able to be returning back to my land. And so let me tell you, there are many of us, especially the Sephardic Jews, scattered throughout the nations, that have clearly, that are lamenting. Ephraim lamenting, you have chastised me. Abba Yahuwah has put us through many things. We are the Israel that was chastised. We are the Israel that was the outcast. We are the ones that have been outcast, chased into the nations of the world where we've served other gods, we've bowed to other gods, we've had other religious ways, and we've learned the ways of the nations, and we've become like the nations of the world, and we are so far from the ways of Abba Yahuwah. But praise the Father for the greatest love story that is in the process of happening right now, where the Father is being able to gather a people. He's gathering his house. He's the one gathering his house. He's bringing a great awakening right now. And in the churches, all of a sudden, there is a people waking up to realize there must be more, there must be more. And all of a sudden, returning to Jeremiah 6:16, come back to the ancient paths. They're coming back to their ancient paths. They're coming back to understanding this is the way, and we will walk in it. We will come back to his ordinances. We will come back to his truths. We will come back to his ways, and we will keep his ways. And so it says, you have chastised me. I was chastised like an untrained calf. Turn me back, and I shall turn back, for you are Yahuwah, my Eloah. You see, when you seek him with your whole heart, you will be found by him, and then he will deliver you from the places where we were sent captive. Isn't that amazing? What an amazing promise of the Father. For after my turning back, I repented, and after I was instructed, I struck myself on the thigh. I was ashamed, even humiliated, for I bore the reproach of my youth. Is that not who we are as the house of Israel? You need to understand your identity today. Today you're going to understand your identity, because you need to identify yourself with a house. You are not just a Christian. You are not just a believer. You belong to a house. You belong to a people group. You belong to the house of Ephraim. You belong to the house of Israel. Is Ephraim a precious son to me, a child of delights? For though I spoke against him, I still remembered him. That is why my affections were deeply moved for him. I have great compassion for him, declares Yahuwah. And this is what he turns around and he says in Hosea chapter 2. And this is what he's wanting for us. And we will read it a little bit on. We're going to read Hosea for us to understand Abba Yahuwah's promise, for us to understand who we are, for us to understand that if you are faithful and you are now coming back to his ways, coming back to his Torah, coming back to his precepts, his ordinances, his truths, then understand you are part of a house. You are not just an outcast. You are not a Gentile. You are not one. Gentile is one without Yahuwah. You have Yahuwah. You have Messiah Yeshua. And you are being grafted back into a house. He's cut off some branches so that you could be grafted in. You are not a branch sapping of your own. You belong to a covenant. You belong to the covenant that was made with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, that became Israel. But it unfortunately was split into two houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. And to this day, it is still split. But yeah, Jeremiah is prophesying of what is going to be. Set up signposts. Make landmarks. Set your heart towards the highway. Oh, wow. What highway? The highway of holiness. The way in which you went. Turn back, O maiden of Israel. Turn back to these cities of yours. Till when would you turn here and there? Oh, backsliding daughter. You see, for how long are we going to go on the highway of our flesh? For how long are we going to go on the highway of our religious ways? For how long will we go our own way and our own religious mindsets and our own religious ways and the religious things that have been given us? For how long will we continue to go on the highway of our own making? As opposed to Isaiah 35 that says the highway of holiness, which is the highway of set apartness, the ways of Yahuwah. A backsliding daughter, for Yahuwah has created what is new on the earth. A woman encompasses a man. Oh, wow. Isn't that interesting? A woman is encompassing a man. Wow. Wow. A woman will protect a man. Wow. That is amazing. A new thing that he's doing on the earth. Interesting. Could that be maybe why he's raising up women? Because all we constantly get is women need to be put down. Women need to be put down. But Yahushua, even when he came out of the tomb, as he resurrected, who was the first person that was there at the tomb? Mary. Mary, that was wanting to come and hang on to his garment, that he said, do not touch me. I haven't yet ascended to my Father. But go and tell my disciples. She was the first one to go tell them that he has resurrected. Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, the Eloah of Israel. Let them once again say this word in the land of Yehudah and its cities, when I turn back their captivity. Yahuwah bless you, a home of righteousness, mountain of set apartness. So you see, understand, the land of Israel right now is not a land of righteousnesses, and is not a land of set apartness. It's Abba Yahuwah's land, but it's a very unholy place right now. And in Yehudah, all its cities, farmers, and those who journey with flocks shall dwell together. And I shall fill the weary being, and I shall replenish every grieved being. At this I awoke and looked around, and my sleep was sweet to me. See, the days are coming, declares Yahuwah, that I shall sow the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah with the seed of man and the seed of the beast. So you see, there will be a land and there will be a people, and it will be the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And they're no longer going to be two houses split that came from a southern kingdom and a northern kingdom. And the northern kingdom went totally astray into Syria, and from there into the nations of the world. Totally mingled, don't even know where they are. But guess what? Father knows each and every one of them. He has your name written on the palm of his hand, because Yeshua died at the stake for you, and therefore your name was engraved in his palms. Why? Because he died for the 12 tribes. He came for the 12 tribes of the house of Israel. And it shall be that I have watched over them to pluck up and break down and throw down and to destroy and to afflict, and I shall watch over them to build and to plant, says Yahuwah. So isn't this exactly what he's done? He's plucked up, he's broken down, he's thrown down, he's destroyed, he's afflicted, but now he's going to watch over them to build and to plant, declares Yahuwah. So at the appointed time, he will gather us, and then he will plant us in the land of where we belong. So don't worry, beloved. Don't worry where you find yourself right now. This is not your destination. This is not your place. This is not where you belong. You have a land. You have a destination. You are destined to go to a promised land where you will live in safety and peace. And there will be a king ruling over you, our Messiah, Yahushua. In those days, they shall no longer say, the fathers ate sour grapes and the children's teeth are blunted. But each one shall die for his own crookedness. Whoever eats sour grapes, his teeth shall be blunted. See, the days are coming, declares Yahuwah. Now, here's the most beautiful scripture. Oh, wow, these scriptures. See, the days are coming, declares Yahuwah, when I shall make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah. So understand, this is the renewed covenant. This is the covenant that is the covenant of Yahushua. And so you need to understand, if we do not come to the place that they do not, if Yehudah does not receive Yahushua, they cannot be part of this renewed covenant. Because let's go and see where this is spoken of. Let's go to Hosea. So we're first going to go to Hosea, and we're going to see this in Hosea chapter 1. Let's go first to Hosea, because we've got a few scriptures over here to read so that we can see this whole thing, so that you understand. You need to understand. If you don't understand Abba Yahuwah's plan, how do you understand what he's doing on the earth? You need to understand what his plan is. You need to understand what he's doing. So look at Hosea chapter 1 from verses 11. And the children of Yehudah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together and appoint for themselves one head, and shall come up out of the earth. For the great is the day of Israel. Great is the day of Yasharal is going to be that day, because then we are going to be Yasharal. That is who we're going to be. So you see, this is what we must understand. This is what the Father is doing. So, and then we have a look. So it is going to be Hosea 1 verses 9 and 10. Let's see again. And he said, call his name Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I am not for you. Yet the number of the children of Israel, so we're still in Hosea, because I read verse 11, but I also want to read verse 10. And it says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea. You see, because we are the greater ones. Yehudah at the moment is a small number. But those of the house of Israel will be as many as the sand of the sea, which is not measured nor counted, as it shall be in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people. They shall be called, you are the sons of the living El. So you see, those who are not his people are now going to be his people. So have a look. You'd have to read through the whole of Hosea chapter 2. It's the most beautiful story. If you really want to understand Abba Yahuwah's absolute bridal message to a people, it's the most beautiful message. But I just want to read from verse 23. It says, and I shall sow her for myself in the earth, and I shall have compassion on her who had not obtained compassion. And I shall say to those who were not my people, you are my people, while they say, my Allah. So do you see? Who is that? Who are those that were not his people? This house of Israel, we are those that can be seen as not being Jewish. It's got nothing to do with being Jewish. It's got everything to do with being part of the house of Israel. And this is his promise to Jeremiah, where he is gathering us from the four corners of the earth. He's going to gather us. So he says that he's going to make a covenant. So let's go have a look at Hebrews chapter 8. So we're going to go look at Hebrews chapter 8. Hebrews chapter 8, from verses 8 to 12. From verses 8 to 12. Now listen to what he says. Finding fault with them, he says. See, the days are coming. You see, a lot of people say he found fault with the Torah. So it says, for if the first covenant, let's look at verse 7. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then there was no place would have been sought for a second. Finding fault with them, he didn't find fault with his covenant. He found fault with the people, because the people didn't keep the covenant, because the covenant was written on tablets of stone and not on the tablets of the heart. So he says, finding fault with them, he says, see, the days are coming, says Yahuwah. The days are coming, says Yahuwah, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah a renewed covenant. So you see, this is written in the New Testament, in the New Covenant, not just in the Old Covenant, and not just in the prophets. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them out, when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Mitzrayim, because they did not continue in my covenant, and I disregarded them, says Yahuwah. So you see, what does he do with Israel now? What does he do with the house of Israel? He is sending Yehudah into exile, into Babylon, because why? They were not wanting to keep his covenant, so he sends them away. Because this is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahuwah. giving my laws in their mind, and I shall write them on their hearts, and I shall be their allure, and they shall be my people. And they shall by no means teach each other his neighbor, each one his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah, because they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them. Because I shall forgive their unrighteousness and their sins, and their lawlessness I shall no longer remember. And that is going to be all from Jeremiah 31 to 34. And so that's what we're going to see. Then in Jeremiah chapter 10, we're going to read Jeremiah chapter 10 from verses 16 to 18, and it says there again, This is the covenant that I shall make with them after those days, says Yahuwah, giving my laws into their hearts, and in their minds I shall write them, and their sins and their lawlessness I shall remember no more. Now, where there is forgiveness of these, there is no longer a slaughtering for sin. So understand, he's the one, not like the covenant. So now we go back to Jeremiah chapter 31, and now we're going to read exactly what we just read there in Hebrews chapter 8 from verses 8 to 12, and it says, Not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I strengthened their hand to bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahuwah. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel. After those days, declares Yahuwah, I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts, and I shall be their Lua, and they shall be my people. So understand, this is the covenant that he makes with them, because if we're going to go look at Ezekiel chapter 36, let's just quickly go to Ezekiel chapter 36. In Ezekiel chapter 36 from verses 25 to 29. We'll quickly go there so we can see that this is what the Father has done, fulfilled it by giving us his Ruach. Ezekiel chapter 36 verses 25. And I shall sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from your filthiness, and from all your idols I cleanse you. And I shall give you a new heart, and put a new spirit within you. And I shall take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I shall give you a heart of flesh. I put my spirit within you. See, he'll put his Ruach HaKodesh within you, and I shall cause you. I give you my Ruach, and then the Ruach of Yahuwah shall cause you, listen, to walk in my laws and guard my right rulings, and shall do them. And you shall dwell in the land that I gave your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I shall be your Lua. And I shall save you from all your uncleanness, and I shall call for the grain and the increase it, and I shall bring no scarcity of food upon you. Make note of that. So those whom he's going to take out, he shall not allow any scarcity of food to be able to be upon them. And I shall increase the fruit of your trees. Okay, we don't need to go there. So I shall save you from all your uncleanliness. So you understand, he's the one who's going to save us. So who are these? See, this is the house of Israel. Now understand, this is why he's given us the Ruach. So what is the purpose of the Ruach of Yahuwah being given to you? The Ruach of Yahuwah that's been put within you is to do what? To cause you to walk in my laws and guard my right rulings, and you shall do them. Not this just wanting to be able to have a manifestation of the flesh, to have a nice manifestation of the flesh, because this is what everybody wants to chase after, do you understand? And so this is why we need to understand what the Father is saying in this hour. And so if we now look and we see, let's read Jeremiah 31 verses 33. And this is the covenant that I will make with them in the house of Israel after those days. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts. And I shall be their Alua, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall they teach each other his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares Yahuwah. For I shall forgive their crookedness and remember their sins no more. So, if we now go look at Isaiah chapter 56, in case you're sitting over there and you are saying to me, but that cannot be me, because I'm not Israel. I'm just a foreigner. I don't know if I've got Jewish ancestry. All right. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 56, that we can quickly look at Isaiah chapter 56, because we need to understand, we need to solidify this today. We need you to understand today, because we must understand this must be solidified for you to know who you are, for you to understand the Father's plan. Isaiah chapter 56, let's go read from verses 1. Thus says Yahuwah, God right ruling and do righteousness, for near is my deliverance to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the man who does this, and the Son of Man who becomes strong in it, guarding the Sabbath, lest he profane it, and guarding his hand from doing any evil. So do you see? He wants us to guard the Sabbath. He wants us to be able to guard our hand from doing any evil. And let not the son of the foreigner. Okay, so that might be you right now saying, well, Natalia, you know that you are part of this house, but how do I know? Okay, now this is for you. Let not the son of the foreigner who has joined himself to Yahuwah speak, saying, Yahuwah has certainly separated me from his people. Nor let the eunuch say, look, I am a dry tree. Look at verse 6. Verse 6, also the sons of the foreigner who joined themselves to Yahuwah, to serve him, to love the name of Yahuwah. So do you understand? We serve him, we love the name of Yahuwah. We are those returning back to the name. To be his servants, all who guard the Sabbaths and not profane it, and are holding on to my covenant. Them I shall bring to my set-apart mountain, and let them rejoice in my house of prayer. Their ascending offerings and their slaughterings are accepted on my slaughter place, for my house is called a house of prayer for all the nations. Listen, verse 8. The Master Yahuwah, who gathers the outcasts of Israel, declares, I gather still others to him, because those who are gathered, besides those who are gathered to him. So understand, he is the one that is going to gather us from the four corners of the earth to be able to join us to this house that he's speaking about over here. And no one will need to teach us to know Yahuwah, because once we are coming onto this path, we come to know Yahuwah. Let's look at verse 35 of Jeremiah 31. Thus said Yahuwah, who gives the sun for a light by day, and the laws of the moon and the stars for a light by night, who stirs up the sea and its waves roar. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. So let's quickly go to Psalm 89 verse 37. Listen to what he says in Psalm 89 verse 37, so that we can understand the importance of these heavenly bodies in the heavens. Psalm 89 verse 37 says, like the moon, it is established forever, and the witness in the heaven is steadfast. So his seed shall be forever, and his throne as the sun before me. Like the moon, it is established forever, and the witness in the heavens is steadfast. So you see, he puts the sun, he puts the moon, he puts these things in the heaven, and just like he's put sun, moon, and stars in the heavens, that he says, who gives the sun as a light by day, and the laws of the moon and the stars for a light by night, who stirs up the sea and its waves roar. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. Now understand, clearly we see in Genesis chapter 14, where he turns around and he says that in Genesis 1:14, you don't need to go there. Let the lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens, separate the day and the night, and let them be for signs, appointed times, for days and for years. So do you understand? He is saying he has put the laws of the moon. Who are we to turn around and create our own calendars and create our own things, do away with the moon, do away with the laws of the moon. So now we don't want to keep the moon when it starts, when it's supposed to start. So we do a dark moon. We don't even need to look at when the slither is there, because we say, oh no, this is all part of Eastern religion. And then we want to do away with the moon altogether if we, follow an Enoch calendar of the sun calendar. But he says he put the laws. And just like he's put this in the heavens, he says, Yahuwah of hosts is his name. He says, who stirs up the sea and its waves. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. If these laws, now I want you to hear this clearly. If these laws vanish from before me, declares Yahuwah, then the seed of Israel shall also cease from being a nation before me forever. So what is he saying? You see, if the house of Israel is going to start doing away with these laws, of which he's put in the heavens, sun, moon, and stars, he put these laws of the sun, and he's put the laws of the moon. And if they start to do away with it, then the seed of Israel shall cease from being a nation before me forever. So who are we now to be able to do away with these things and do it our way as opposed to doing it the Father's way? So now we've got a man-made calendar. So the Jews are making their own man-made calendar. You've got the Enoch calendar that does away with the laws of the moon completely. They say, no, you just keep a sun calendar, because this is what came from these scrolls, these Dead Sea Scrolls, that now they follow this whole thing of the Enoch calendar, and now they do away with Jeremiah chapter 31. And understand, this is end times. So why is this written in this chapter? Because this is for the house. This is going to be the importance of the house of Israel, that's made up of the house of Judah and the house of Israel. They will be the ones keeping his laws the way that it should be. And this is what we are going to understand today, because it says, then if we do away with it, Israel will cease to be a nation before me forever. Thus says Yahuwah, if the heavens above could be measured and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I would also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, declares Yahuwah. So you see, for everything that we would have done, we would have been cast out. But he did not cast us out. See, the days are coming, declares Yahuwah, that the city shall be built for Yahuwah, from the tower of Hananel to the corner gate. And the measuring line shall again extend straight ahead to the hill Gareb. Then it shall turn towards Gohar, and all the valley of the dead bodies, and of the ashes, and the fields, as far as the Wadi Kidron, to the corner of the horse gate, towards the east, is to be set apart to Yahuwah. It shall not be plucked up or thrown down anymore forever. So I wonder if this whole area that he's busy mapping out could just be the whole place of where he's going to put his new temple, when he has his temple where he's going to reign and rule for 1,000 years. So praise Abba Yahuwah for this beautiful teaching that he has given us tonight, where he has opened up for us to understand all of this is prophetic. All of this is prophetic of what needs to come. So do you see how important it is that you walk out his prophetic work in this time? May Abba Yahuwah bless you all. Shavua Tov. May you have a blessed week. Shalom, shalom.